Let me stop you right there because you are probably doing it wrong. Not the coffee itself. The coffee is fine. I'm talking about what you're putting into it every single morning that is silently working against your biology. Most people think that adding things to coffee makes it worse for you, that the healthiest version is plain black. And for years, that was the consensus. But what the research from the last decade has uncovered completely flips that assumption on its head. Because it turns out that plain black coffee already contains a compound called chlorogenic acid, a compound that acts like a biological key, trying to open a very specific lock in your body. A lock that controls whether your stem cells stay dormant or whether they flood your bloodstream and begin repairing every organ, blood vessel, and joint in your body. The problem? That key doesn't work alone. Every single morning, most people are jamming the wrong things into it. Sugary syrups, ultra-processed creamers, flavored powders, and permanently jamming the mechanism shut. Here's what I want you to think about before we go any further. If you want to understand why two people the same age, eating roughly the same diet, living roughly the same lifestyle, can have completely different health outcomes 10 years from now, don't look at their cholesterol panels. Don't look at their blood pressure readings. Look at something most doctors never measure: their circulating stem cell count and their brown adipose tissue activity. These two markers, working in tandem, determine how fast your body repairs itself after damage, how efficiently it burns stored fat, and how resilient every organ you own is to the slow erosion of aging. Specific compounds added to your morning coffee. Compounds you can buy for under $15 at any grocery store have been shown in peer-reviewed research to measurably shift both of these markers simultaneously. Not in months, in weeks. I am a metabolism researcher, and I want to be transparent with you about something. For nearly a decade, I've watched patients cycle through the same frustrating pattern. They try to lose weight. They fail. They try supplements. They see no results. They try eating less. Their energy crashes. And for a long time, I attributed this to willpower, genetics, or just the slow mechanics of aging. But then I spent 2 years deep inside the literature on something called mitochondrial uncoupling and stem cell mobilization through dietary compounds. And what I found changed how I counsel every single one of my patients. We've been solving the wrong problem. Most people are trying to force the body to change. But your biology already has every system it needs to burn fat, repair tissue, and regenerate at a cellular level. It simply needs the right molecular inputs to unlock those systems. And the most underrated delivery vehicle for those inputs? A cup of coffee you're already drinking every single morning. In this video, I'm going to show you why your morning coffee, right now, is only operating at a fraction of its biological potential. And the specific reason most people never realize this. The 5 specific compounds you can stir into your coffee that trigger stem cell mobilization, brown fat activation, and visceral fat breakdown with exact doses from the research. 2 mechanisms your body has for burning fat that have nothing to do with calories or cardio. And how to switch both of them on before 9 a.m. The cinnamon mistake that 95% of people make that isn't just ineffective. It may actually be quietly harming your liver. A precise preparation method for your coffee that determines whether these compounds are even bioavailable by the time they reach your cells. And 3 things most people add to their coffee every morning that are literally blocking the very biological processes we're trying to activate. Quick favor before I continue. Some people have told me they've watched several videos here without realizing they weren't subscribed. Could you check right now? It's free. It takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps this channel reach people who want science-based information rather than the usual wellness noise. I'd really appreciate it. Before I get into the 5 things to add, I need to spend a minute on something I'm going to call the sabotage problem. Because there's no point in adding what activates your biology if you're simultaneously pouring in what shuts it down. Here's what I mean. Every morning when you drink that first cup, roughly 300 milliliters of chlorogenic acid enter your digestive tract. Now, most people think of chlorogenic acid as an antioxidant, something vague and general that's good for you. But that's an enormous underestimation of what this compound is actually doing. Think of your stem cells like a fleet of highly trained repair technicians who've been locked in a waiting room. They're not asleep. They're not broken. They're just waiting for authorization to deploy. Chlorogenic acid, in the presence of your body's natural cortisol peak, which happens to occur between 6 and 9 a.m., acts like an authorization code being broadcast through your bloodstream. It tells your bone marrow, deploy the crew. There is work to be done. But here's where it gets critical. That authorization code has to reach your cells intact, and your cells have to be in a state where they can receive it. If your bloodstream is flooded with insulin from sweetened creamers, your body is in storage mode, not repair mode. If your mitochondria are sluggish from inflammatory compounds in ultra-processed additives, the signal gets blocked. It's like trying to reach a construction crew by radio when someone left the wrong frequency on. The coffee itself is doing its job. Most people just aren't letting it finish. The second piece. Your body has 2 types of fat, and most people only know about one. Now, before we talk about the specific compounds, I need to explain something about fat that changes the entire conversation around weight loss. Most people think of fat as a single thing, a passive, inert substance that accumulates when you eat too much and shrinks when you eat less. But your body has 2 functionally opposite types of adipose tissue. The first is white adipose tissue, the kind most people are familiar with. It stores energy. It accumulates around your abdomen, thighs, and hips. When you're in chronic inflammation, white fat also releases a cascade of inflammatory cytokines that accelerate aging at the cellular level. The second is brown adipose tissue, and this is where it gets remarkable. Brown fat doesn't store energy, it burns it. Specifically, it burns white fat by converting it directly into heat through a process called thermogenesis. Brown fat cells are essentially biological furnaces. They're packed with mitochondria, far more than any other tissue in your body. And they contain a specialized protein called UCP1, uncoupling protein 1, that essentially puts your fat burning on autopilot. Think of brown adipose tissue like a thermostat in your house that, when activated, never turns off. It just quietly burns fuel in the background, 24 hours a day, independent of your exercise habits, and regardless of whether you're at rest or moving. Adults have significant deposits of brown fat around the neck, collarbone, and spine. The question is whether it's active or dormant, and the answer almost entirely comes down to what you're eating and drinking. 3 of the 5 compounds I'm about to give you directly activate UCP1 in brown fat tissue. One of them does it faster than any drug currently in clinical trials. Before I give you what to add, let me tell you what to remove. Because if you keep these in your cup, nothing else I tell you today will work. Flavored syrups and commercial sweeteners. 1 pump of a standard vanilla syrup from a major coffee chain contains roughly 5 g of high-fructose corn syrup and a synthetic emulsifier called carboxymethylcellulose that has been shown in animal studies to disrupt tight junction proteins in the gut lining. When your gut lining is compromised, 2 things happen. Systemic inflammation rises, and your stem cell signaling pathways get flooded with noise. It's like trying to hear a whisper in a room with a fire alarm going off. Ultra-processed creamers. Most non-dairy creamers contain hydrogenated oils and titanium dioxide, a whitening agent now classified as a possible carcinogen by the European Food Safety Authority. These compounds spike your LPS, lipopolysaccharide levels. That's the toxic byproduct of bad gut bacteria, which directly suppresses the bone marrow signaling that triggers stem cell release. Protein powders blended into coffee. I know this will surprise some people because protein powders seem healthy, but most whey protein powders contain artificial sucralose. And a 2022 study from the Medical University of North Carolina found that sucralose 6-acetate, a compound produced when sucralose is heated, as it is when stirred into hot coffee, causes DNA strand breaks in human gut cells. You're adding something marketed as a health product that is under the specific conditions of your morning routine, potentially damaging your cellular DNA. Remove these 3 first, then add what I'm about to tell you. Here are the 5 compounds with exact amounts used in published research that you can add to your morning coffee beginning tomorrow. Raw cacao powder, 1 TT. TSP, 5G. Not cocoa, not hot chocolate mix, not dark chocolate chips. Raw cacao powder, unroasted, unprocessed, cold-pressed. The difference matters enormously at a molecular level. Commercial cocoa is Dutch processed, which means it's treated with an alkalizing agent to reduce bitterness. That process destroys up to 77% of the flavonols, specifically epicatechin and procyanidin B2, that are responsible for the cardiovascular and stem cell benefits. Raw cacao also contains phenylethylamine, PEA, a naturally occurring compound that your brain also produces during positive emotional states. PEA has been shown to upregulate CXCL12, a chemokine that directly governs stem cell trafficking from bone marrow into peripheral blood. How to add it? Stir 1 TSP into hot, not boiling, coffee. It dissolves fully above 150 degrees def. Start with half a teaspoon if the flavor is unfamiliar. You can increase to 2 TTSP, the dose used in the research studies, once adapted. Ceylon cinnamon, 1/4 TTSP, approximately 0.6 GB. And now, the myth bust you need to hear. Walk into any supermarket and grab the cinnamon from the spice aisle. Read the label. There is an 85 to 95% chance it says cassia cinnamon or simply cinnamon without specifying the variety. And that distinction could be quietly damaging your liver. Cassia cinnamon, the dominant commercial variety, contains a compound called coumarin at concentrations of 1 to 12 milliliters per gram. The European Food Safety Authority's tolerable daily intake of coumarin is 0.1 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. For a 150-lb adult, that's roughly 6.8 milligrams per day. A single teaspoon of cassia cinnamon can contain 5 to 10 times that amount. Studies of people supplementing with cassia cinnamon for metabolic health have documented elevations in liver enzyme markers within 12 weeks. Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled true cinnamon or Cinnamomum verum, contains coumarin at levels 250 times lower than cassia. It is safe at the doses needed to produce metabolic effects. Ceylon cinnamon contains a compound called MHCP, methyl hydroxychalcone polymer, that functions similarly to insulin at the cellular receptor level. It activates GLUT4 transporters, pulling glucose out of the bloodstream and into muscle cells without requiring an insulin spike. This directly suppresses the insulin-driven fat storage cycle. A 2019 study from the Karolinska Institute found that 1 g of Ceylon cinnamon daily for 8 weeks produced a 14.5% reduction in fasting blood glucose and a measurable decrease in visceral adiposity independent of caloric restriction. How to add it? 1/4 TTSP of verified Ceylon cinnamon. Check the label explicitly. Order online if your local store only carries cassia. The taste in coffee is warm and subtly sweet. Most people find they no longer need any added sweetener once this is in the cup. Ground cardamom, 1/8 TSP. Cardamom is known as a culinary spice, a staple in South Asian and Middle Eastern coffee traditions going back centuries. What those cultures may not have realized is that they were intuitively activating a very specific fat-burning mechanism. Cardamom contains 1,8 cineol and alpha-terpinyl acetate, two volatile compounds that have been shown in laboratory studies to activate the beta-3 adrenergic receptor on brown adipose tissue. The beta-3 receptor is essentially the on switch for UCP1, the thermogenic protein I described earlier. Pharmaceutical companies have spent hundreds of millions of dollars developing synthetic beta-3 agonists to replicate this exact effect. Cardamom does it naturally, and unlike pharmaceutical beta-3 agonists, it does so without elevating heart rate or blood pressure, an important distinction for anyone with cardiovascular concerns. A study from King Saud University following 80 participants who consumed 3 g of cardamom daily for 12 weeks found significant reductions in triglycerides, LDL, and BMI, alongside notable improvements in antioxidant enzyme activity, specifically superoxide dismutase, which protects mitochondria from oxidative damage. How to add it? Use freshly ground whole cardamom pods when possible. The volatile compounds degrade rapidly after grinding. 1/8 TSP is sufficient and harmonizes beautifully with cinnamon and cacao in the cup. Grind the whole pod, including the green husk. The husk contains fiber-bound compounds that slow the absorption of cineol, prolonging its effect. Lion's mane mushroom powder, 1/2 TSP. This is the most underappreciated item on this list, and within a decade, I believe it will be one of the most discussed compounds in regenerative medicine. Lion's mane, Hericium erinaceus, contains two families of bioactive compounds found in no other food source on Earth. Hericenones, found in the fruiting body, and erinacines, found in the mycelium. Both have been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier, an extremely rare property for food-derived compounds, and directly stimulate the synthesis of nerve growth factor, NGF. NGF is not just a brain chemical. It is one of the primary molecular signals that governs neural stem cell differentiation, the process by which stem cells in your central nervous system decide to become functional neurons, glial cells, and myelin-producing cells. As we age, NGF production declines. This is one of the core mechanisms behind cognitive decline, peripheral neuropathy, and reduced neuroplasticity. But more relevant to this video, NGF also plays a role in peripheral stem cell homing, a process by which circulating stem cells navigate to sites of tissue damage and begin repair protocols. Research from the University of Malaya showed that daily lion's mane supplementation for 16 weeks in adults over 50 produced significant improvements in cognitive function tests alongside measurable increases in plasma NGF levels. How to add it? 1/2 TSP of lion's mane extract powder, not whole ground mushroom. The extract form ensures consistent hericinone concentration. It has a mild, almost neutral flavor, slightly earthy, that disappears completely in coffee with the cacao and cinnamon already present. Important note, look for dual extracted products, hot water extraction plus alcohol extraction, as hericinones are alcohol-soluble while beta-glucans are water-soluble. Both fractions are needed for full benefit. MCT oil, specifically C8 caprylic acid, 1 TSP. Let me be specific here, because this matters more than most people realize. MCT oil is a blend of medium-chain triglycerides. Most commercial MCT oils are a mixture of C8 caprylic acid and C10 capric acid. Some contain C12 lauric acid. They are not equivalent. C8 is converted into ketones in the liver at a rate 3 to 4 times faster than C10. Ketones, specifically beta-hydroxybutyrate, BHB, are not just an alternative fuel source for the brain. They are epigenetic signaling molecules that inhibit the HDAC histone deacetylase enzymes responsible for silencing your longevity genes. In practical terms, A morning dose of C8 MCT oil in your coffee produces a measurable ketone spike within 30 to 45 minutes, even without any other dietary change and without breaking your overnight fast. That signals your cells to enter a mild cellular maintenance mode, the same mode triggered by caloric restriction and prolonged fasting, but without the discomfort of either. This matters for stem cells because that cellular maintenance mode, characterized by the activation of AMPK, AMP-activated protein kinase, is one of the primary upstream triggers for stem cell mobilization from bone marrow. A 2021 publication in Cell Metabolism demonstrated that AMPK activation increases circulating hematopoietic stem cells in peripheral blood by stimulating the expression of CXCR4 receptors, essentially giving stem cells a more sensitive GPS signal toward damaged tissue. How to add it? Start with half a teaspoon for the first week. Many people experience digestive discomfort when introducing MCT oil rapidly. Build to 1 TSP in week 2 and 1 to 2 TSP by week 4. Use C8 dominant MCT oil. The label should specify caprylic acid, or C8. Add after the coffee is brewed, not during brewing. Blend for 10 to 15 seconds, if possible, for optimal emulsification. It improves mouthfeel dramatically and ensures even distribution. Now that you have the what, let me show you the why. The 3 specific biological pathways through which these 5 compounds work together. The autophagy stem cell clearing pathway. Here's a concept that most wellness content skips entirely, because it requires understanding something counterintuitive. Before your stem cells can effectively repair damaged tissue, that tissue needs to be cleared of debris. Think of trying to rebuild a house that's still full of rubble from the last storm. The construction crew, your stem cells, can show up, but they can't work effectively until the demolition team clears the site first. Autophagy is that demolition team. It is your cell's internal recycling and cleanup process. And the chlorogenic acid in your coffee, amplified by the AMPK signal from the C8 MCT oil and the mild thermogenic signal from cardamom, activates autophagy in a targeted, controlled way. When this pathway is running properly, damaged proteins, dysfunctional mitochondria, and cellular waste products are cleared. The tissue environment becomes what researchers call permissive for stem cell engraftment, meaning stem cells can actually land, integrate, and do their repair work. Without autophagy clearing the site first, many mobilized stem cells simply circulate and return to the marrow without ever completing the repair cycle. This is why flooding your system with stem cell activating foods without addressing the cellular environment can produce disappointing results. The brown fat thermogenic cascade. This is arguably the most direct fat-burning mechanism on this list, and it works differently from anything most people have heard of. When cardamom cineol compounds activate the beta-3 adrenergic receptor on brown adipocytes, a protein called UCP1 is upregulated. UCP1 does something extraordinary. It uncouples the mitochondrial electron transport chain. In normal metabolism, the energy released from burning fat and glucose is captured as ATP, the body's usable energy currency. UCP1 disrupts that capture process, causing the energy to be released as pure heat instead. This means brown fat, when activated, is burning calories without producing ATP, essentially running your internal furnace without filling the tank. It is pure substrate-burning thermogenesis. The relevant detail for fat loss. The primary substrate used to fuel this UCP1-driven heat production is free fatty acids mobilized from white adipose tissue, specifically visceral fat. Studies tracking this pathway using PET-CT scanning, which can visualize metabolically active brown fat, have shown that activated brown fat in a single session can consume energy equivalent to 200 to 300 calories worth of white fat. Ceylon cinnamon amplifies this by simultaneously reducing insulin levels. When insulin is low, Your white fat cells can release stored fatty acids more freely, giving brown fat more fuel to burn. The NGF stem cell differentiation loop. Here is the mechanism that connects everything, and the one that explains why this approach addresses both brain function and body composition simultaneously. When lion's mane's hericenones cross the blood-brain barrier and trigger NGF synthesis, a cascade begins. NGF binds to TARK-A receptors on neural stem cells in the hippocampus and subventricular zone, two of the brain's primary stem cell niches. This binding triggers MAPK signaling, which tells those neural stem cells to differentiate into functional neurons rather than remaining in a quiescent state. But here's what's less known. NGF also communicates with the hypothalamus, the brain's master regulator of metabolism. NGF input to hypothalamic neurons modulates the sympathetic nervous system's activity toward peripheral adipose tissue. In plain terms, higher NGF, more sympathetic tone directed at fat tissue, enhanced fat mobilization, and thermogenesis. This is not a speculative connection. A 2018 paper in Nature Metabolism demonstrated that central NGF signaling directly regulates peripheral adiposity through hypothalamic circuits. Animals with impaired NGF signaling developed obesity at equal caloric intake to controls. Animals with enhanced NGF signaling showed resistance to diet-induced obesity. Your morning coffee with lion's mane and raw cacao working together is sending a signal from your gut to your brain, and your brain is sending a metabolic signal back to your fat tissue. This is biology operating at a systems level, not the isolated nutrient-by-nutrient approach most people take. Let me tell you something that almost no one discusses. The way you prepare this coffee determines whether these compounds are bioavailable by the time they reach your cells or whether you're essentially wasting them. Coffee temperature matters. Brew your coffee between 195 F and 205 F. Below this range, the extraction of chlorogenic acid is incomplete. Above this range, and this applies particularly to boiling, heat degradation begins to break down phenolic compounds before they even reach your cup. This is the same principle as the green tea temperature rule. Precision here is not pedantry, it's biochemistry. Add in order matters. Raw cacao powder and Ceylon cinnamon should go into your cup before you pour the coffee. Hot liquid hitting these powders activates better dispersion and reduces clumping. MCT oil goes in after the coffee is poured and should be blended. Even a milk frother for 10 seconds is sufficient to create a proper emulsion. Unblended MCT oil sitting on the surface of your coffee degrades faster and absorbs less efficiently. The timing window. The cortisol awakening response. The natural spike in cortisol your body produces in the first 30 to 45 minutes after waking creates an ideal hormonal environment for the fat mobilization pathways we've described. Drinking this coffee within that window, before cortisol begins to decline, amplifies the thermogenic and stem cell activating effects. This means drink it within 45 minutes of waking, and don't eat a large meal for at least 60 minutes after. Do not add dairy. Any milk protein, casein, or whey binds to the epicatechin in raw cacao through a polyphenol protein complexation reaction. The resulting complex has significantly reduced intestinal absorption. Studies have quantified this. Dairy milk reduces the bioavailability of cocoa flavonols by up to 55%. If you prefer a creamy texture, use unsweetened oat milk or almond milk. Neither contains proteins that cause this binding effect. If this video gave you something you haven't heard before, something you can actually use starting tomorrow morning, please share it with one person. Not because it helps me, but because most people will never find this information on their own. And they're drinking the same cup of coffee every day, adding the wrong things to it, and wondering why nothing's changing. Subscribe, if you haven't already. My next video covers something I've been reluctant to discuss publicly: the 3 common foods that most people eat daily that are measurably suppressing stem cell activity, and what the emergency medicine literature actually says about them. If this exploration of your morning ritual has changed how you view the potential of your daily cup, please subscribe and like this video. We are uncovering the biological truths that have been hidden in plain sight. Let's optimize your health together. The next breakthrough in cellular regeneration is coming soon.